Imagine standing on a hill overlooking the march of human history. Cities rising and falling, empires conquering and collapsing, innovations blooming and then turning into weapons of mass destruction. In just the blink of geological time, humanity has journeyed from stone tools to split the atom, only to face the specter of self-annihilation. Could it be that our civilization's pattern of misunderstanding and conflict was somehow programmed by mysterious creators? And if so, are we doomed to wipe ourselves and the planet out? Did someone design us to self-destruct? Question: if there were architects behind humanity, ancient aliens, a cosmic intelligence, or programmers running a universe-sized simulation, might they have baked conflict into our code? Some thinkers point to our tribal instincts, in-group versus out-group wiring that gives us survival edge in small bands but spells disaster at global scale. If you were designing a species for drama and dynamism, you might include a fierce loyalty gene that flares into war when resources run low. But that same trait fuels culture, art, and cooperation. So is it a bug or a feature? What patterns do we see in our short history? Rapid innovation, fire, agriculture, writing, industry, nuclear power, all in a few thousand years. Misunderstandings and wars, competition for land, resources, ideology, or simply fear of the other. Technological leaps outpacing wisdom, we created tools before mastering empathy at scale. These cycles repeat again and again, almost like a script. Yet human history is also full of golden ages, periods of peace, exchange, and shared prosperity that suggest free will and choice, not hardwired fate. Is total self-destruction inevitable? Here's the hard question. If you plot conflict and disaster on a graph, it looks like an accelerating curve. More people, more weapons, more stakes. But consider the counter-trend. Global cooperation on climate accords, international disease surveillance, collaborative space missions, technology for peace-building. Question: does the rise of a global network of communication tip the balance toward unity or toward global-scale conflict? The answer isn't written in the stars. It depends on our collective choices. Could we override our programming? Even if we carry tribal impulses, we also possess empathy, foresight, and abstract reasoning. We can teach children cooperation, build institutions that punish aggression, and design technologies that connect minds instead of dividing them. Here are a few pathways out of the self-destruction trap. Education and empathy, broadening perspectives beyond narrow tribes. Global governance, shared rules for weapons, resources, and environment. Ethical AI and biotechnology, tools that reinforce our better angels. Cultural narratives, stories that celebrate unity over fear. Why cling to hope? Because unlike a story with a fixed ending, our chapter in the cosmic saga is unwritten. If creators exist, they seem to have given us the freedom to choose, not a rigid script. Every treaty signed, every barrier torn down, and every act of kindness writes a new plot twist. Even if self-destruction were the default, it can be overturned by concerted effort and a shared vision of survival. So are we destined to extinguish ourselves? Not unless we choose that ending. Civilizations have risen and collapsed before, but ours is the first with the tools to obliterate the entire planet, and also the first with the tools to avert that fate. The question isn't whether self-destruction is possible, it's whether we will muster the will to steer away from catastrophe and toward a future where understanding, not war, becomes our grandest achievement. So throughout history, human civilization has experienced frequent episodes of war, violence, and ideological conflict, often within surprisingly short periods of peace. These cycles are driven by resource competition, mistrust, cultural divergence, and failures in communication. Despite technological and moral advancement, our species continues to struggle with large-scale cooperation and sustainable conflict resolution. The recurrence of war suggests systemic vulnerabilities in how humans organize societies and manage power. This raises the question of whether these flaws are accidental or intrinsic to our nature. In the 20th century alone, 2 world wars, numerous civil wars, and genocides occurred despite rapid advances in science and communication. It's like a brilliant but unstable engine that keeps overheating and exploding despite frequent upgrades. Human society can be viewed as a complex adaptive system that self-organizes and evolves in response to internal and external pressures. These systems often develop emergent properties, patterns not designed but arising from simple local interactions. However, complexity can also make systems fragile, especially when feedback loops amplify instability, especially when short-term gains override long-term resilience. In this light, repeated societal collapse may not be accidental, but a structural inevitability without intervention. The fall of the Roman Empire involved military overreach, economic strain, internal division, and information failure, a systemic breakdown. It's like building a tower, taller and taller until its own weight causes it to crumble. Some speculative theories propose that human behavior, especially tendencies toward tribalism, dominance hierarchies, and conflict, is a byproduct of evolutionary pressures. Others go further, suggesting that if humans were created or influenced by advanced intelligence, ancient aliens, simulations, or a designer species, self-destruction could be a built-in limit to prevent uncontrolled expansion. This could act as a fail-safe mechanism, deliberate or emergent, to test species maturity or isolate dangerous civilizations. Whether metaphysical, programmed, or statistical, the high risk of collapse might not be accidental. It may reflect deep-level constraints in consciousness, cognition, or societal scalability. In Fermi's paradox discussions, one explanation is that intelligent civilizations self-destruct before reaching interstellar travel. It's like designing a vehicle that can go extremely fast, but only until it overheats and shuts down automatically. Much human conflict stems not from malice but misunderstanding. Language ambiguities, cultural filters, and cognitive biases lead to perception gaps. At scale, these misunderstandings can escalate into ideological rifts, polarization, and war. Human brains evolved for tribal cooperation, not global integration, and often default to in-group/out-group thinking. Combined with confirmation bias and emotional reasoning, rational discourse becomes fragile under stress. This raises concerns about whether our mental architecture is suited for planetary civilization. The Cold War nearly escalated to nuclear war due to misread signals and mistrust, not actual aggression. It's like two people arguing in different languages and thinking the other is threatening them, until it's too late. Human civilization has developed technologies capable of reshaping the planet and destroying all life. But moral, philosophical, and institutional development has lagged behind. This imbalance creates existential risks where the tools of civilization outpace our wisdom to wield them. Nuclear weapons, synthetic biology, and AI pose profound threats if guided by short-term interests or misused by unstable actors. The very success of our intelligence accelerates the risk of our self-destruction. The absence of a synchronized ethical evolution system could mean this trajectory is unsustainable. The development of nuclear bombs occurred before international laws or frameworks could manage them, leading to decades of existential risk. It's like giving fire to children before teaching them about burns. Historical patterns suggest that civilizations rise, peak, decline, and collapse in recognizable cycles driven by resource depletion, inequality, or internal rot. The theory of catabolic societies argues that complex societies inevitably consume more than they can maintain, triggering downward spirals. However, collapse does not necessarily mean extinction. It can also create room for renewal and reinvention. This pattern may reflect natural evolutionary limits rather than a hard-coded endpoint. Collapse might be a pruning mechanism, not a programmed failure. The Maya and Indus Valley civilizations collapsed, but aspects of their knowledge and culture persisted or revived in later societies. It's like a forest fire clearing space for new growth. Destruction as a form of reset. Speculative frameworks like the simulation hypothesis raise the idea that human civilization could be an experiment designed by external intelligences. In this view, repeated conflict and near destruction might be parameters in a simulation to evaluate moral progress or evolutionary outcomes. This is philosophically similar to theological tests or mythic cycles of destruction and renewal. If so, self-destruction may be less about inevitability and more about whether we evolve past it. These interpretations remain unproven, but offer provocative metaphors for understanding our systemic fragility. Some theories suggest that only civilizations that can pass the Great Filter, WHE, avoiding self-destruction, are allowed to join interstellar communities. It's like a maze that resets every time a player fails, until one learns to navigate without triggering collapse. Although patterns of collapse and conflict are recurring, they are not unbreakable. Human capacity for foresight, cooperation, and adaptation is unprecedented in natural history. Through systems thinking, ethical global governance, education, and AI-assisted coordination, collapse could be prevented or softened. Technology that once threatened civilization may also help preserve it. If guided by wisdom and global stewardship, the challenge is not overcoming enemies, but ourselves. Global treaties on ozone depletion, Montreal Protocol, show that international cooperation can reverse dangerous environmental trends. It's like realizing the steering wheel works just in time to avoid a cliff edge. The prevalence of conflict, instability, and systemic failure may seem like a design flaw or even deliberate programming, but it may also be a natural feature of complex adaptive systems pushed beyond equilibrium. Whether by divine design, evolutionary dynamics, or emergent chaos, the risk of civilizational collapse is real, but not necessarily final. Understanding the dynamics of self-destruction may allow us to rewrite the script. The future depends not on whether collapse is possible, but whether we choose to learn before the final act. Civilizations that create resilient institutions, embrace transparency, and integrate wisdom with power may outlive those that do not. It's like a story whose ending changes based on whether the protagonist grows in time to stop the tragedy.